With training camp and the regular season right around the corner, it's time to get your thoughts on the Toronto Raptors. Hey everyone, welcome to Inside the Raptors. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun NBA writer Ryan Wolstat, who recently opened up the mailbag to get readers and their burning questions on this Raptors team. And Ryan, we'll begin with Ed, who wants to know what kind of job did Raptors management do in acquiring players this offseason? What letter grade would you give them?
Well, I think this is kind of a bit complicated because I know some people want them to do a lot and might disagree, but I gave them an A minus, which might seem high since there was no real blockbuster moves or anything. But I just think based on what they had at hand and just what they went into the offseason with and what they came out of it with, I think maybe A minus is slightly high, but I think anything lower than a B plus is too low. So that's what I settled on. I think that they really did well at the draft, getting a bunch of players they liked, especially since they lost their higher pick, their top 10 pick to the Spurs as part of the long ago Jakob Poeltl trade. I think they still did quite well coming away with Jacoby Walter. Jonathan Mobo in the second round is really interesting, and Jamal Shed and Ulrich Chomsky at the end there, who's kind of like their higher ceiling Bruno type of pick. I like what they did there. I think they spent their assets wisely. I think they made a great trade. I know it's not like a blockbuster, but you basically traded the worst player on the roster, Jalen McDaniels, and you got a bunch of assets, including a Shed, and I believe Chomsky came in that. And there's a high second rounder coming from Portland next year. Portland's going to be awful, so that's going to be a good pick and a good draft. And you get Davion Mitchell, who's potentially like a really important guard on a team that doesn't have a lot of good guards. So I think that was an A plus top 10 Raptor trade ever, even though, it's not like the biggest names. It was just you trade like one of your worst assets to a team that's desperate for cap space and come out with quite a lot. So I think, they didn't make a big trade. They didn't trade Poeltl. They didn't trade Bruce Brown yet, but there'll be more moves coming. And I think based on what they had, as I said, it needs to be a good grade.
So you mentioned a bunch of the players there that Patrick wants to know about. He says, does Davion Mitchell become our sixth man, or will Jamal Shed become a rotation player before Jacoby Walter does?
Well, I'll answer the last one first. I think Shed, yes, he's ahead of Walter. I talked to Walter's coach around the draft time, and he said he thinks he'll be really good, but he's very young. He's 20, I believe. He's very thin. He needs to grow into his body. So the Baylor head coach believes it's going to take a bit more time versus a guy like Shed, who's already the Defensive Player of the Year in the NCAA, a senior guy who's kind of been through it all, winningest player in Houston history, a lot like a Fred VanVleet, a little bit taller, maybe not quite as good, probably not as good. I mean, VanVleet's a really good player, all-star, but a guy that should step in and really compete with Davion Mitchell for that backup point guard spot. They're cut from the same cloth, amazing defenders. Shed maybe has a better reputation as a shooter, but I think Mitchell, yeah, he's a chance to win that six-man spot. It's going to be interesting what they do with if they start Grady Dick right away, or if they try to get Bruce Brown's trade value up and start him early on. So I think Shed's in that, I mean, not Shed, Mitchell is in that range for sixth, seventh, or eighth man. I think Shed works his way into the rotation. I think Walter's going to be not till the end of the year, kind of like Grady Dick did last year.
Yeah, some interesting options there for the Raptors. And B wants to know which players are expected to be on the Raptors roster to start the season. Which Raptors players to start the season are most likely to not be on the roster at the end of the season, whether they are traded or waived. And you mentioned a couple that could be potentially not there, whether it's a Bruce Brown or otherwise. But who do you have at the top of the list?
Well, it's Brown at the top of the list. They acquired him from the Pacers in the horrible Pascal Siakam deal in the hopes that they'd be able to get something like a first round pick as well as a contract ballast for him. They haven't been able to do it yet, but they picked up his option to take another crack at it because, expectations are low this season anyway. So they might as well keep that asset instead of letting him go in a bad free agent class. There was no one to sign anyway. So they brought Brown back. And now they'll try to deal him again. So I would say the odds are very, very low that he is a Raptor past February's trade deadline. They're going to get whatever they can for him. And if they can't, I mean, I think they will be able to at least get a second, hopefully more for their sake. And if they can, I think they would just cut him loose and let him go to the buyout market. But I don't think it'll come to that. But either way, I don't think he'll be on the roster. Canadian Chris Boucher, unfortunately, I can't see a long runway for his future as a Raptor. He never really fit in with Darko Rajakovic's system. Darko likes quick decisions, don't hold the ball, kind of move the ball on offense, and Boucher didn't really fit with that. He's a really useful player on an expiring contract. I think a really good energy big, and I think a team is going to come calling for him. And then So those two, yeah, I find unlikely. And the real wild card is Jakob Poeltl because he makes the team so much better, even though he's a pretty understated player. We've all seen how much better they are, particularly defensively, with Poeltl on the court. So if they really want to go hard at Cooper Flagg and the other guys at the top of the next draft, then a move for Jakob Poeltl would happen. But for my money, I think that would be more likely next offseason than during this year. But it's always a possibility.
Well, some great questions to kick off the mailbag. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Ryan Wolstat, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.